The Mets took a major hit as Francisco Alvarez has been placed on the injured list with a thumb injury that will require surgery. It's a brutal blow for a team that's been fighting to stay in the playoff hunt. So, what does this mean for the lineup, the catching depth, and the Mets' chances going forward? Joining me to break it all down is a host of the Subway to Shea podcast. His name is Anthony Rivera, and he joins me now. Ant, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing good. I wish I could give Francisco Alvarez a hand, no pun intended, because that's been the biggest problem with him is those injuries to his hands.
Yeah, that has been the biggest problem with him. He definitely needs a hand, but this is tough news for Mets fans. And let's start with the big picture here, Anthony, because how devastating is this news for the Mets to lose Francisco Alvarez to a thumb injury that we know will require surgery?
It is devastating, especially with the fact that he's finally started to hit consistently, and he's been a big part of the lineup over the past couple weeks. Ever since he came back from his demotion to AAA, he's been very good hitting. He's been very consistent, and to lose him to another hand injury, this time it's the other hand. It's very frustrating, not only for him but the team in general, who really needed him to come into his own because he's been plagued by these injuries, and he's going to need his hands, right? He's going to need to be able to hold the bat, swing, and without that, especially being in the backstop and having to catch these balls and throw to second, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's going to be really tough. Listen, you think about catchers, there's so much wear and tear on them, and then,
Yeah.
catching high 90s fastballs, right? Sometimes even in the triple digits. That's just hard to do. And then the way he just injured it, sliding headfirst into second base, it's really tough. Now, when you look at Alvarez, and you kind of mentioned this, because since returning from his demotion earlier this season, he'd been cooking offensively. If Alvarez ends up missing the rest of the season, can this lineup realistically survive without him?
I think it can, but first off, the top four guys need to be on their game probably all at once, right? I mean, we haven't really seen Alonso, Soto, Lindor, and Nimmo hit in stride all together at once all season. Maybe one gets hot, the other one's not, but those four are the key to this offense. Now, you look at guys like Jeff McNeil, who provide a little bit of a spark. The guys to me that really need to step up, Brett Beatty needs to be consistent. He's batting very well over the past 7 games, 375, but can his bat stay consistent? It has been consistent all season. Then you got Mark Vientos, who's finally getting more opportunities to play. He's had 2 home runs in his last 2 games. You're starting to see him starting to heat up and get big at bats and score some big runs here. And then for me, the other one who really hasn't taken off since coming here is Cedric Mullins. I mean, we got him here mostly for his bat, right? We thought he was going to be better than Tyrone Taylor. He really hasn't showed that. Actually, he probably is hitting a little bit worse than Tyrone Taylor since coming here. And we really need Cedric Mullins to spark up, get a little bit, give this lineup a little bit of a spark at the back end. And we just haven't gotten that yet. So those are the three, I think, to me, that can help this lineup when you have guys like Luis Torrens and Hayden Singer mostly in there for defense at catcher.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought those names up there about the guys to replace Alvarez as catcher, because the options to replace him, they have to come internally, right? Because we're past the trade deadline here. So Luis Torrens, he's the next man up. Do you believe that he can hold things down for however long that Alvarez is out? Do you believe that he can do that?
I believe that he can do it defensively. Now, maybe he doesn't provide that spark offensively. We know what the talent is when it comes to Francisco Alvarez being that number one overall prospect a couple of years ago. We know what he could provide, the power and all that. Luis Torrens is not going to do that, although he did when Alvarez was out at the beginning of the season. If you remember, it was Torrens and Hayden Sanger, who for the most part, we're holding down this team, holding down the pitching rotation. We're doing very well defensively, and that's why this team got off to such a great start. The pitching and the way that these two catchers were handling the staff. So I think that they can do it. I'd like to see Luis Torrens get a little bit of a spark now, knowing that he's going to play a little bit more, but over the last 3 months, it just hasn't been good for him offensively. And we know Hayden Singer really can't hit as well either. But these two guys can hold it down defensively. If that's the plus that we get from them, I'll take it, as long as the guys that we talked about earlier in the offense step up their game.
Yeah, you'll need those guys to definitely step up their game. Now, I think when you look at this with Alvarez, Anthony, he's dealt with a handful of hand injuries early in his career, right? Should
Yeah.
the Mets be worried about his durability long term and maybe start thinking about a more reliable starting catching option here? Is that something you think the Mets should be thinking about?
It's so tough because he's still so young that I don't want to give up on Francisco Alvarez yet. I mean, look at what happened. Travis d'Arnaud is probably the best example. We had
Mm.
him, and he was so injury prone, and then the Mets decided to let him go, and he became a star in Atlanta, and he always haunted the Mets. So I'm not gonna give up on Francisco Alvarez yet. These injuries have been more, I guess, on the offensive side, running the bases. I know he got hit in the hand twice, and then two injuries was running the bases and slipping, and now this one with the sliding. So I'm not willing to give up on Francisco Alvarez yet. Maybe they need to find a better backup, but even Luis Torrens is good. I don't know. I just think that I am not willing to give up just yet on Francisco Alvarez.
Okay, yeah. I wonder if that's something they might think about, though. You make up a good point there in terms of upgrading the backup catcher or getting a better offensive backup
Yeah.
catcher.
No
Slightly.
disrespect to
Yeah,
Luis
no shade.
Torrens because I think he's a good backstop, a good backup to any catcher. It's just that if you want a little more spark offensively, you might have to improve at some point in that position.
Yeah, no, totally understood there. I think last thing for me here, Anthony, is do you think that Alvarez's injury changes the Mets' outlook for the rest of the season? Are they still a playoff caliber team in your eyes without him, or does this injury actually shift expectations for you?
Maybe shift minor, like a little bit. But as I said earlier on in the season, they didn't have Francisco Alvarez, and they were one of the best teams in the league without him. And those two catchers, didn't provide that much of a spark. So I think that they could still make the postseason. It's going to be on the bats of your core offensive players in Lindor, Soto, Nimmo, Alonso. If, like I said, whatever you can get from Jeff McNeil, great. And then you got Beatty as well as Mark Vientos. If they can find more consistency at the plate, I think that helps the Mets out. And it would be nice to see Cedric Mullins get an opportunity. And I know Jose Siri is not too far behind.
Yeah, look, I think when you think about all this, tough blow for the Mets losing Alvarez, especially as he was starting to heat up. But you're making the point that other guys have to step up in this lineup, and now is the time if they're going to do it. It's now or never, right? We're coming to the end of August. We're approaching September. We will see if the Mets are able to do that and guys are able to step up. And also, if Francisco Alvarez is able to play through this injury and return, we shall see. That is Anthony Rivera, host of the Subway to Shea podcast. Go check out the podcast. Wonderful podcast covering the New York Mets. And always a great pleasure to talk with you about some Mets baseball. We'll do it again soon.
Absolutely appreciate you, Dexter. Thank you.